In this video, I will provide you with another project that you might be able to build without a lot of complicated math or calculations. And we're simply going to have a deck with 3 steps. And the beauty of this is that you're going to be able to use 2x6 or 2x8. However, with this design, we might have a problem with the building code that requires a 4-inch sphere or a round ball to not be allowed to travel through any part of the stairway. And we're going to be at 4 inches here. If I have a 2x6 and then I put an 1.5 inch thick decking board on top of that, I'm going to be right at 4 inches. And if I use 2x8 for something like this, I'm going to be over 4 inches. And I'm also creating this design here to sit on top of soil. And I'm not about to suggest that these bottom boards won't rot. And I will leave it up to you if you need to make further modifications to this to meet local building codes or work in your area. Another good thing about this design is that we are not going to have any mitered corners. Everything is going to be a 90-degree angle. And that's going to make this project a lot easier to build also. And to calculate the lengths of the boards we're going to use for the smaller stringers, all we need to do is draw a straight line down here and then measure each one of the boards from that straight line. And that's going to give us the length of each board for these smaller stringers. So in other words, this board right here will be the same length as this board. This board here going back to the line will be the same as this one here. And I know that might seem confusing, but let's go ahead and motor on and continue with our tour here. Don't forget you can stop the video at any time. And of course, watch the video again if you miss something or if something isn't quite making sense. And don't forget that you can modify this design, like I mentioned earlier, by installing additional bracing, blocking, and structural supports. And you can connect each one of the 2x6s together with building hardware like straps or flat framing anchors, even blocks. Just make sure that you install some of these framing anchors on each side. If I was just going to install all of these framing anchors on this side, along with the straps, then it might allow the 2x6s to fold over at the breaks or where the 2x6s are going to be connecting to the other 2x6s. So we're going to need to install some type of support bracing on both sides. And another idea might be to use a block. And if you put the block in between 2 boards here and then attach it with screws or nails, something like this here on both sides, then you might be able to use that instead of something like this. And you might even be able to use dowels to fasten these together. And don't forget to check out other types of framing hardware that you can use to create stronger stair stringers. And to figure out this length here, we're simply going to lay out some of our decking boards until we get the desired width that we want. If you want to cut one of these in half or cut it down to create a specific shape, then go ahead and do that. I'm not doing that. This deck, to meet most building codes, needs to be 36 inches long or 36 inches wide here. And to get that, I think 36 inches is right about here. I made it a little bit longer. You can't make it shorter, but you can make it longer. And if we use this method here, we're going to be able to create a deck that doesn't have shorter boards in it. Our deck's going to look nicer, at least in my opinion. And we're going to do the same thing with our stair steps. 2 steps with a 2x6 is going to give us about an 11-inch wide step. And it's going to be important to keep all of our stair steps the same width or depth going in both directions. So if you can see here, we're just simply raising this step up here. And I'm going to do the same thing with this step here. And finally with our last step here. If you notice, I've created a flat section here. And we're going to use each section here to calculate the lengths of our decking and stringer boards. And this is the beauty of this right here. This really makes your job easy. And make sure that you figure out the width and the depth of the deck before you get started. So in other words, you might not need to cut any of these boards For example, if I had 10-foot 2x6, I could lay the 10-foot 2x6 next to each other, put the desired gap in between each board if I'm going to have a gap in between each board, and then grab my measuring tape and measure the distance. And if I want to make this distance here the same as this distance here, so that both the width and the length or the depth of the deck will be the same size, then I can do that. And it wouldn't be that difficult to lay out your boards in this direction here with the desired gaps if you're going to have them, and have them run full length to get these measurements here. So the measurement for this board right here is going to be the measurement from right here to right here. The measurement for this board right here, this step, this 2x6, the second one down, is going to be measured from right here to right here. And this board here is going to be the measurement from the front of this right here all the way to the back. And you guessed it, this measurement here all the way from this point to this point is going to be the measurement of our bottom board. And now would be a good time to point out that the bottom board will need to be ripped down and made a little bit shorter. What you're going to do is take the height of the decking. 2x6, we're going to have 1.5 inches thick 2x6. We're going to subtract 1.5 inches off of the bottom board. So if we have a 5.5 inch wide 2x6, we're going to rip that down to where it's 4 inches wide. And that's going to allow you to make each riser height the same size. So again, these lower boards, all of them are going to be 1.5 inches shorter if we're using 1.5 inch decking. If I'm using 2-inch thick decking, then I'm going to subtract 2 inches off of my 2x6. And I won't be going into a lot of detail about that in this video. However, I do have plenty of other videos at our website. Make sure you check them out if that doesn't make sense. And in our design here, these are not going to be the same size because the width of this is shorter than the length. And you can see it right here. If I wanted to make this length here the same as this length here, then I would need to cut these boards a little shorter. For example, if I have 3 foot 3 1/4 inches as a measurement from here to here, I've figured out how many decking boards I'm going to need according to my local building code. Got to be bigger than 3 foot. Then the same is going to hold true for the width. I could simply cut these boards here 3 foot 3 1/4 inches to create a square landing, or a landing with the same measurement for the width as it would be for the depth. And that's going to change the measurement of some of our boards. And I could always make this 4 foot wide and this 4 foot long also, if it's going to work with our decking. And hopefully that makes sense. However, if it does not make sense, then feel free to let us know in the video comment area any questions you have about this, or if there was something I didn't mention, or if you have a better way, then feel free to share that with us in the video comment area.